This is I Love Black People Radio on HUR Voices, Sirius XM, Channel 141. I Love Black People is more than a radio show. I Love Black People is a call from our ancestors to protect us from racial profiling all across the world. Go to iloveblackpeople.com and become a member today. Membership empowers you to live fearlessly and protect Black people globally from racism and xenophobia. Join us today and become a member of our global network with an online global green book with Black-owned and Black-friendly businesses to protect you and your community. Membership is free, and with you, we will become 10 million strong worldwide. I am because we are. Special thanks to AFLAC for supporting I Love Black People Radio.
Greetings and welcome to another edition of I Love Black People. And I just want to say it's good to be Black in Washington, D.C. After a very detailed, extensive, rigorous trip back to the motherland from Zimbabwe and Johannesburg and in South Africa, as well as a brief stint in the United Emirates in Dubai. Back in the United States capital. Muriel Bowser is the mayor, and so happy to be, able to take this time and kind of, reconnect and kind of reflect on a good trip back to the motherland. One day, I'll just stay there and taking trips to the United States. I think so often people think that we have to live in one place and that's it. But literally, we're a product of international travel, even being here in these North America, these Americas. So I think it's very interesting as we start looking at our lives and people talk about where they want to be or where they want to live, that we sometimes limit that to somehow one geography and make it seem as if we can only live in one place. But definitely would love to be able to, as time goes on, spread equal time in the States with Zimbabwe as well as in the Caribbean. So, as you think about what your vision is for the rest of your life or your perfect space, my staff is remote. So the I Love Black People staff is in Rwanda, Kigali, Kenya, Nairobi, Johannesburg, South Africa, Zimbabwe, as well as the Atlanta and Washington, D.C., and Baltimore. So, we have our staff all over the place. We can all be on the beach somewhere doing our work as long as we get it done well. This past couple of weeks, when I was in Zimbabwe, we have an office there in Harare in the International Conference Center for Harare. So that time, we get our team together for, about a little over a week, 10 days to kind of drill down on the things that we're going to be doing for 2023. One of the great things that came out because of Sister Anana Akua, we got our next, I think it's a fourth edition of the Global Green Book, highlighting Black-friendly places, a Black travel survival guide, identifying businesses across the globe safe for Black people. So we got our 2022 year-ending book that's available. Y'all can go on Amazon and pick it up. Everything that we do it goes to support building a great network to protect our people from racism and xenophobia. This radio show, in so many ways, allows us to elevate the work of so many wonderful Black folks, so many folks who are doing things that are very important to our community, and that allows us to also focus and talk about some of the work that we're doing as a startup. So the Global Green Book is out. Make sure you guys get it. I want to say it's like 20, whatever it is a good price. I don't want to misquote the price of the book, but it comes in a paperback as well as digital copies. And this book is focused again on healthcare with I Love Black People. Again, for those who don't know, our focus is basically a digital network, very similar to what Victor Green, who is the person who developed the original Green Book, his concept was to allow us to create a way for us to travel fearlessly without being harmed or humiliated. And they focused on three key categories: uh, places to eat, places to sleep, and transportation. We took that concept and we expanded it, and we've included places to eat, of course, places to sleep, transportation, but we expanded it to include health, legal, education, finance, and beauty. And what we realized was travel is just one form of vulnerability. Because you don't know anyone, that makes you vulnerable. So if you're making decisions, it's important that you get good information, and good information is accurate, relevant, and timely. So when you're in that type of situation where you don't know anyone, you need good information. Well, the same thing happens when your health is in danger, as we realized with the COVID and with the pandemic. Literally, you need to have good information when you're dealing with something like that, that's life or death, like your health. So again, with our Global Green Book, this year edition has focused uh, primarily on healthcare. So we have listings of healthcare professionals that are Black friendly throughout the world, that have been pulled together by our members. And make sure you join. Like, if you haven't become a member of I Love Black People, it's free. Okay, we do have Prime members, and their support helps us in so many ways. But literally, become a member and start contributing. The contributions that you're giving is not money; it's your literal insight at the places that you already go to, that you already experience, that are treating you the way that you should be treated, with the dignity and respect that we all should have. The more members we have, the more people we'll have contributing to creating this safety net. So it's important that those in my voice, or you, if you're already a member, have your friends sign up. The members that are Prime members, of course, you get a T-shirt, all these great things. But what you really get is an opportunity to support a uh, a solution that gives us the power. Like, we're not waiting for someone to help us. We can help ourselves by identifying these places. Now, of course, we're constantly seeing in the headlines, and I was literally on the continent when the word got out about the most recent police attacks. And it was interesting. And when you're in other countries, or you listen to the international news, anytime police are involved, it's the government, and the people who are killed by the government. But somehow it's separated in the United States. It's not the U.S. government killed this brother, but it's somehow another group of people. In reality, it's the same government. And so many people talk about state level, city, municipal, but the system that actually oversees this comes under the actual government that we always talk about, the government. And in other countries, the police are often doing some of the same wicked things. I've traveled over 60 countries, and I'll be candid. Candid. Most places I've visited have been Black people have been in fear of the police, even in on the continent of Africa. So I do think Zimbabwe is much better, in the sense that Zimbabwe, most of their police don't carry guns. So as we talk about, traveling abroad and doing different things, Zimbabwe is one of the few countries where it's a Black majority country, where the law enforcement is not done with sidearms. By and large, most of the police don't carry those kind of weapons. They got these sticks, and they got these spikes in the road. And some people even talk about the fact that that for police that are, or for law enforcement that is actually involved in traffic stops and traffic uh, monitoring, that they shouldn't even carry guns. Like, again, the use of deadly force for a tail light or speeding is excessive in almost any case. And that there are places in the world where the people pull you over. I've been unfortunately pulled over in Zimbabwe, and again, you're pulled over by a police officer without a gun, and you abide by they give you a ticket or whatever, they traffic infringement, but infraction, but you go about your business. So the fact that if you don't use your tail light, or excuse me, you don't lose your blinker, and that somehow that the person who's informing you of that and giving you a ticket for it has to have a gun, is not necessarily a truism. That's something that has been accepted, but the consequences of these police carrying guns has shown itself for time and time again to harm particularly Black folks. And looking at this as, again, attack on a very specific community. I'm sure there's some Geneva Conventions. I'm sure there's some international laws where literally the government can't disproportionately continue to harm us. So, looking at solutions, if the police that we see every day didn't carry guns, but yet for those police that were called for violent crimes or issues related to violence, it probably makes sense that they would also have equal, or if not better, I want to say weapons. But by and large, most of these crimes are nonviolent. And somebody having a gun probably is not going to help us de-escalate. If not, we've seen time again is escalating. So I think it would be great to see a pilot program, or parts of cities where literally they said, look, from this time, and maybe they have it from one part of the day to maybe it's not at night, in the daytime. Well, at night the police are even whew. So, but they could come up with a way where literally having it set up where for a certain period of time, police would not be carrying guns that are dealing with traffic stops, and the police that are dealing with drug related, or crimes related to violence, those would be the ones that would be armed. So I think there's a lot of things that we can explore by looking at examples throughout the world that we don't often look at. But my trip in Zimbabwe, it's always interesting when I tell people that literally in Zimbabwe, the police don't typically carry guns. And, by and large, when people talk about gun violence, they know very particularly where it happened and when it happened. And they're very rare and far in between. So I think, again, we should relook at those things as we think about how we should be governing ourselves. But back to the Global Green Book, as I said, we expanded it to the health. We also included legal, education, finance, and beauty. So it's 8 categories in our Green Book. So, like I said, Amazon. I think we're going to get it out in some Black bookstores. So if you got any Black bookstores that you think would be the right fit for something like this, please let us know. We're also looking for other opportunities to have the book as a guide for people to use. A lot of good information in it. We highlighted some historical Black universities in the United States as well as in Africa, which we think is a great addition, and allowing everyone to kind of participate. So we're gonna do a good job of making sure the information that we have is not just focused on the United States, but we look at it again as a Pan-African perspective. And when you do that, we say African American, we talk about 43, and they always undercount about 43, 45 million people. But when we start talking about the Pan-African diaspora, or the Pan-African community, we're talking about 1.5 billion. And that's a real number. That's about the size of China. So that's a real number of people. So when we talk about what we're doing to create a safety net, to build something to help create a world where we no longer have to suffer the harms and humiliation of racism and xenophobia, these are the things that we're leveraging at the brilliant minds of that 1.5 billion plus people. Because again, when we're talking about this, we're talking about us as descendants of African people and our ancestry, but we're also talking about those who may not be a part of our ancestry or community like that, but who support the dignity and respect of Black people. And again, that has no boundaries. We want the whole world to realize and understand the relevance and significance of the need to treat our community with the dignity and respect that's been often denied in a white supremacist ideology that's in many ways still is a part of so much of what goes on in the world as we see ourselves moving about and all of us seeking the sovereignty, the ability to move with the respect that we deserve. So we see that as a very key thing. And I think one of the things that we discussed while we were together in Zimbabwe um, is the issue of xenophobia, which we don't normally talk about as much in the States. We talk about like the racism as we see with what happened with the police in Memphis. And I think sometimes people, when they see the perpetrators of the activity uh, not being white, they somehow wonder, well, how could this be white supremacist ideology? And that's why we say it's an ideology. It's not a person. It's not a person you can like point your finger at a white supremacist ideology person. It's an ideology, so it can be practiced by anyone. It can be practiced, and unfortunately, sometimes the this ideology is practiced by black folks better than some white folks. And there are some people who want to show how much they support this way of looking at the world, and they will go above and beyond to just display that. Or the understanding of the ideology, they also discount blackness and will do things to black people that they would never do to any other people because they see their lives and who they are at a premium. So we have to be aware that it's not like looking at your neighbor or your coworker. It's an ideology, it's a practice. It's almost like even with the horrible sexism and misogyny we see in this world, but there are women who literally can practice a behavior that takes on an ideology that puts women at a discount and men at a premium. Where a woman might say something to them, they'll dismiss it, but a man say the same thing and they literally agree with it. Now that's still sexism being practiced by a woman. Now, again, these things are just wrong, full stop, no matter who's perpetrating them. Now, I'm very clear where the originator of sexism is definitely not a woman, but again, the everyday practice and us seeing and experiencing, I'm just trying to be clear that these things can come from many directions, and you can't just look at someone's face and say this is about to happen a certain way. Uh, Again, these are things that we have to be vigilant of, and I think that's one thing that we stop. Sometimes we get to a certain level of access or success, and look at some of these issues as something that's behind us instead of understanding that we live in a very interconnected world. And as Martin Luther King has said it, so many Kwame Nkrumah, so many people have talked about how we have to, Kwame Ture, we have to organize. There's no other way. There's not going to be technology that gets us out. It's not going to be some votes that get us out of this issue. We got to continue to organize ourselves around solutions that help our community. So again, I think it's important as we examine some of these issues, we take a viewpoint that allows us to leverage the resources we have to make a difference without waiting for someone to come. And I think one of the things that we've seen, and this is again illustrated in my recent travels, the issues of xenophobia. I was in South Africa, in Johannesburg, and I took one of our employees who had never been on an airplane before. So I took one of our employees, never been on an airplane, and he had a great time. We got to Johannesburg, and we actually missed the flight on the way back, but that's okay. That was another learned lesson. Like, you want to learn about flying, missing flights is probably a lesson that's good to learn early, just to know how to handle those things. So I will suggest, if you miss your flight, it's probably better to go back to the airport than calling on the phone to get your flight arrangements, because locally they oftentimes have better prices, and you'll meet people who will sometimes be more understanding. But again, we've seen a lot of debacles lately with flights, so I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole. But one of the things that we were looking at in Johannesburg is there's areas of Johannesburg, where when there are issues of xenophobia, where there are African nationals in South Africa who are attacked. One of the areas that we've seen was called the CBD, and this is in the actual like central business district. And we're looking at putting billboards and using those billboards to basically focus on the fact that the issues of xenophobia are things that we need to be addressing. And one of the slogans that we've come up with the support using social media, what they call crowdsourcing, was xenophobia is a trap, and kind of really talking about the issue of a divide and conquer that we don't talk about. Even happens in the United States, um, where so much has been done to undermine different communities all over the world. And when those people in those communities come to the United States, there's a context of us versus them. And, just to be candid, I always tell people when they talk about the them, I don't know of any place I've been where people dream of going somewhere to clean people's toilets and cut people's grass. When people flee their country, it's because the circumstances that are there have been developed in something that's very inhumane and horrible. And unfortunately, by and large, the United States foreign policy has had a lot to do with many of these countries. So if you see some folks from Afghanistan in America, America probably invaded Afghanistan. If you're meeting Iraqis, it's probably because the United States invaded Iraq. If you see folks from Haiti, from Nicaragua, El Salvador, these are all places where the U.S. military has been active in destabilizing and harming people's countries to create very unbearable situations that cause untold grief on the local citizens that would drive them to give up their birthright, to give up the places where their moms, fathers were born, to flee, to be subjected to all those things that happen in that, and then be treated as a them and attacked through xenophobia. So you're really looking at a cycle of untold harm that doesn't just take place here in the United States. In Europe, you have people fleeing in the Mediterranean to get to Europe with the unbearable things happening in wars, destabilizing Libya. That was done. These are all things that could have been avoided. This is not God that made this happen. It's not global warming that made these things happen. These are literally policies that have in militaries that have, been involved. And you'll hear people say, well, why are there so many folks, in America, from Africa or Europe? And I have to turn the question around. I said, why are there so many Europeans still in Africa? If Africa is so terrible, why are the Europeans still there? Why don't they leave Africa alone? If they want Africans to leave Europe alone, I mean, if there's no problem with Europeans being in Africa, no one should have a problem with Africans being in Europe. I mean, let's just be fair. So again, we sometimes look at these conversations or the construct of these arguments where it somehow points the finger at us as a people, but as Africans, they've welcomed everyone and been very hospitable. It's not until there are outside or there are forces that are pushed or agendas are pushed to get people to separate. So what we've seen as it relates to the issue of xenophobia in South Africa, that anytime there's a political situation going on, things that would allow people to divide and manipulate, you'll see a rise of the attention of xenophobia. And just as much as we see that, one of the things we notice is that with all the NGOs and all the programs going on the continent, supposedly to help us, very rarely do you see dollars, money, resources put in to stop tribalism and to stop xenophobia. And that's pretty curious that there'll be issues about migrants. And it's almost talking about like a labor status. How can people be utilized for cheap labor? Even in the United States, you hear conversations that speak to more to people being able to be legally working than it is about their humanity. So we got to be careful, I think, oftentimes when we're looking at how these arguments are developed, how these conflicts come about, and try to be more thoughtful how we deconstruct and not just finger point. Because with the issues of xenophobia in South Africa, the perpetrator and the victim is black. So now we've polarized again, like those against and for. Instead of having that, the better question, at least that was raised through this crowdsourcing, xenophobia is a trap, is to even ask, like, how did we even get here? What caused this situation, and what can we do to change that? So with that being said, if you definitely want to reach out to us, it's info@iloveblackpeople.com. We're also on Facebook. I Love Black People at Bill Mari. You also can check us out on Instagram, I Love Black People app. We're on LinkedIn, and we always have a Saturday class. Come and check us out. We have a Saturday Pan-African history class with Dr. Tyreen Wright, as well as a health class by Sister Nana Kua. So with that being said, as I always leave you, I am because we are, and I definitely wouldn't be me without you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
This is I Love Black People Radio on HUR Voices, Sirius XM Channel 141. I Love Black People is more than a radio show. I Love Black People is a call from our ancestors to protect us from racial profiling all across the world. Go to iloveblackpeople.com and become a member today. Membership empowers you to live fearlessly and protect Black people globally from racism and xenophobia. Join us today and become a member of our global network with an online global green book with Black-owned and Black-friendly businesses to protect you and your community. Membership is free, and with you, we will become 10 million strong worldwide. I am because we are. Special thanks to Aflac for supporting I Love Black People Radio.